Please, 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 please don't copy this tape. You don't want to do that.
What are you thinking?
It's going off.
And I'm tired of this fireplace. And my chimney's speaking freely. He's telling me what he wants to be at. And my chimney's breathing freely. He's telling me where he'd rather be, Lord. And my chimney's drawing blackness, and he needs some breathing room. And he's talking to someone, thank you, someone very important, please. And it's easier said than done. The smoke goes up and out. How come he's only telling me? And my chimney's speaking freely. He's telling me what he wants to be at. And my chimney's breathing freely. He's telling me where he'd rather be, Lord. And my chimney's drawing blackness, and he needs some breathing room. And he's talking to someone, thank you, someone very important, please, yeah. Said and done, the smoke goes up and out. How come he's only telling me? Oh, it's easier said than done. The smoke goes up and out. How come he's only telling me the smoke goes up and out? Yeah, what's black and white, red all over?
Bad as a mother. Ain't no funky thing going downtown.
You've got to be able to be a strong swimmer to be sailing in wave sailing conditions. If you need a PFD to keep your head above the water, then I suggest go back and take some swimming lessons. But here's the reasons why. When you're in wave sailing or surf conditions, one way to escape a wave once you've crashed is to be able to get down underneath the wave. You've got to be able to swim down deep, and a PFD is not going to allow you to do this. Otherwise, you're just going to be pummeled, and that's what you're trying not to do. Helmets are not necessarily a bad thing, They can be good in many aspects. You know, they protect your head from being hit on the head, which could either save your life or save a scar, like several that I have in my head. The only thing you want to remember about a helmet is make sure that it's not hurting your vision. Vision is the utmost important thing when you're wave sailing. You're always looking, you're always thinking where you're going to be, and you always want to be able to be aware of everything around you. If you can't see because of a helmet, then lose the helmet or find a brand that's good. But remember, one of the most important things is to always sail with a friend. Always have someone out there that knows you're out there. If not, you could run into a situation that you would not want to be in where someone could help you, but they don't. And you just want to have fun. You don't want to die.
Bad as a mother. Ain't no funky thing going downtown.
One of the most key and fun, radical, good-looking, smooth maneuvers in wave riding is just the simple, plain simple bottom turn off the top combination. There's so many different styles of how people do it. You know, you can look at it hook keep on any given day and you can just pick out people just by how their style is. Getting to the lip at the right time is all relative to your bottom turn and how you go about setting up to get to the lip.
If you want to be looking at the wave, eye contact with the wave, and as soon as it starts to get over vertical or more so, and the wall gets so it's heavy, it's going to smack you back, then you go for your bottom turn. Sometimes in the beginning you could look around your mast or looking through your sail, hopefully your window's clean. But also you can look at the bottom of the wave and see where it's starting to kind of suck out. So the more you sail one spot, you get more and more used to it. You could read the wave not just by the lip, but by the bottom of the wave where you can see better.
Because usually before waves break, the water parts and glasses off and projects up and over. So if you look at the water, look up, you'll be right on every time.
When you're starting to ride a wave, especially when it's side shore, you watch all the guys, they stay right on the top of the wave, even if it's quite steep, until they can see it starting to feather somewhere so they know where they want to go, and it's getting quite steep. And then they drop down so they have all the speed when they hit that section. So you can watch it feathering and start to break. You know it's going to break right there. So you stay right at the top until you see that's happening, then you drop into the wave and then you come up and do your thing. But it's a very quick movement. It's not like you go down and then you come up. If you stay on the wave, it's like, you know, it's like that. It's a one movement thing.
Really the most important things that I concentrate on would be one is keeping a lot of speed in the bottom turn. You know, if you lose your speed, then you lose your drive and you lose your momentum off the top.
Speed will always save you. If you have speed, you're safe. If you're going slow, then everything's going faster than you and you end up, I don't know, getting to deal with all the white water and all that. But if you're coming fast, you're away from everything.
That's the thing about speed. If you have enough speed, you can hit it, and if you don't have enough speed, it'll hit you. And you know, you'll feel the pain of the wave. So if you can keep as much speed as possible in the water by using as much rail as you can, leaning the rig forward, leaning the mast forward, that means, and really using the whole rail, like I said, and keeping that board speed as fast as you can, you know, not leaning back on the back foot straps, because that way you start slowing down. You don't want to do that.
I personally like to go into it with as much speed as possible, but if you're going too fast, you might want to pump your sail a little bit to release a little power.
Usually I have to do almost a double pump. I pump once to kind of like check my rail and see if I'm gonna bounce, and then I'll pump again, and I can set my rail in and turn as hard as I want, because for one, I know my rail is gonna stick. For two, I've slowed down enough that my rail won't bounce out.
I always initiate my bottom turns and my oversheeting. It's all kind of one motion. A lot of people would say to me, jibing is sort of like bottom turning. As long as you continue a nice, even turn, you're going to come out of your turn and you're going to have control. You can grab your sail really easy. And it's true, jibing is sort of like bottom turning a little bit. You really need to commit to a turn. You need to make a nice steady turn. And no matter what, just keep turning. You always keep your front arm pretty straight, and you really slide your backhand back a few inches, probably 3 inches, 4 inches, and you oversheet. And just you sliding your hand back is gonna make you oversheet your sail. And the worst thing you can do is sheet out, because you get all this power and it's gonna make you go straight, and then you're not gonna make a big sharp bottom turn. You're just gonna kind of end up somewhere down on the middle of the wave.
As I start to lean into my bottom turn, I'm looking at what size of the wave I have, so I can depend on how sharp I'm going to do a bottom turn. And I really just lean into it and use much as a sail as possible to get as much drive out of it and accelerate up the face of the wave as fast as I can.
Going into a bottom turn, bend your knees. Going off the top, bend your knees. When you bend your knees, you can compensate for the bumps, and it also gives you you can bend your knees and spring up when you need that extra bit of speed to hit the lip when you're a little late. One of the hardest times sometimes is actually getting out to the waves, making it off the beach and getting out set up for picking off waves. What you really got to concentrate is making sure your board goes up straight through the wave and you don't get knocked sideways or anything. You just kind of pop your board over the wave and let the wave go under you, which kind of sometimes will keep you planing if you're in the right spot with the wave, you know. So if you're going out and it's coming right up and it's breaking at you, if you can go upwind a little bit where it's already broken, there's a little bit less power there. So you can bear up and go point upwind and then go over the whitewash rather than waiting for it just to come and break right at you and just wipe you out entirely. Or if you can see that there's, you know, the wave's still peeling and it's not just closing out, bear way off the wind and outrun it and go over it.
You really don't have any control over the ocean. It's going to do its own thing, so you might as well work with the ocean.
A lot of times it's hard to decide whether to fall down and just get worked or try and go through it. That's a judgment call, and that's where the chicken jibe comes into effect. But a lot of times if I'm really in trouble and there's really a big wave coming, what I'll do is I'll just intentionally launch myself forward, and I'll go up to the front of my mast so my mast is out towards the wave, and then I'll just push on the tip of my mast and swim it under like I'm duck diving basically. And that, a lot of times when there's no wind, that's the savior right there, because number one, your mast is already out to sea and you don't break things, and it's just a little bit, you can get worked pretty hard doing it, but at least you save your stuff, and it's better than getting everything thrown back at you in the face.
Probably the biggest fear I have is getting hit by other people.
Sometimes you're in a situation in wavesailing where you're going to be hit by somebody else and it's imminent, you know you're going to get hit, or you are actually going to hit somebody in the water, whether by accident, or hopefully by accident, or just because of the nature of the wave or something like that. In the case where you're going to hit somebody and a crash is imminent, the best thing to do is to get your weight off the board. And that is, in some cases, to actually jump off the equipment at the last second, at least get your feet in a position to get out of the straps, get ready to bail on the equipment, and try to direct the equipment as well as possible away from the guy's head, you know, into his gear instead of him, or into the surfboard instead of the surfer, or something like that. If it's imminent, the worst thing that can happen is you can crash into the person with all your weight driving the equipment into them. The equipment alone probably weighs a total of about, 45 pounds or so, but your body is 150 to 180 pounds, or if you're a girl, 100 to 150 pounds. If you're down in the water and someone's going to hit you, the best thing that you can possibly do is forget your equipment. The equipment's never important in a situation where your body's in danger. Dive under the water as far as you can. Both the equipment and the person that's going to run into you in the ensuing crash will almost invariably stay on the surface of the water. The board's going to float, the sail's going to float. If it's tumbling, it's on the surface. Even the guy's body, if he's tumbling with a wave, he's normally going to be on the surface of the water. If you're only under 2 feet, normally you're far enough so that you're not going to be hit by the equipment when it rolls over top of you.
Take me to.
So one of the hard parts is transitioning from your bottom turn, going into the lip, because once again, timing is essential, and if you're off, and you're gonna get hurt.
Even if the lip isn't breaking and the timing's not right, still go for the top turns. It's not gonna look good if you have a bottom turn and no top turn. It's gonna look pretty bad. But on your top turn, put a lot of pressure. Even if you do slice the wave and go out the back, still, it's much better than not doing a top turn.
As you come and you're making a transition from pulling down to hold your power with your backhand, which is further back on the boom, as you come up to go into the lip, you want to get that board going vertical, and you slide your backhand forward so you got more control to come off of the top. If you're ever in trouble, the safest way to be is going straight into it, because you'll just punch out the back. So it's really key there to, when you're coming down, to make sure you get your board vertical into the lip rather than like this, because the wave will hit you, which I've done, separated my shoulder doing that, and you'll get hurt.
And as I've accomplished that bottom turn, I start releasing the sail out and focusing on where I'm going to hit the lip or do a hard off the top. And as I'm flying up the face, I've let the sail ride out and there's no power in the sail, so I can concentrate on carving the board off the top. And it depends on what size lip it is depending on how hard I want to turn off the top.
So you've switched rails, and once you've switched rails, you should be sheeted out. So look, so the wind's blowing that way, you've got power in your sail, and you're sheeted out, and you switch rails. So whatever happens, you don't really turn off the top if the wave breaks. The wave hits you back down. But because you've got power in your sail, it will hold you upright, and it will bring you down at the same time.
And I see a lot of people coming down line and just holding everything the same, hitting it and staying tucked up. What you have to do is extend the clue, and it brings your board with it. And that, I think, like the best example of that would be how Polakow does his. One of the reasons he can go so vertical and hit it so late is because his clue is almost straight up and down by the time he hits the wave. Whereas most people kind of keep their clue in. Like on starboard tack, I have a problem with that because it's not my natural foot. I'm a goofy foot. So a lot of times I find that I'll hold my clue in and I'll hit a lip late and I'll get tagged on the lip and I won't get the projection that I want. Whereas if I pop my clue, it'll throw me out. So I have to make conscious effort to extend my clue when I hit the lip, and it really does throw you out. Not overextend, otherwise you get backwinded. But just if you extend in that whole body motion, it seems to bring your hips too, and your hips throw your whole board up.
People think they're sheeting out, but they're not. You know, they've got the sail very close, so if something goes wrong, they get caught up in their stuff. The stuff has to be quite far away from you. You've got to exaggerate that push away movement. You've got to like push your backhand out, like and twist your body to push the backhand out, and then you'll be right. It's everything's very exaggerated wave sailing.
A lot of women I see go way too far out in front of the wave so that when they actually come to the top, the wave is hitting them and demolishing them. Whereas if you stay higher on the wave, you're generating more speed, maintaining more momentum, so when you hit the lip, you can use the forward momentum to stay in front of the wave. And I see it a lot of women going out the back, and I did it for such a long time, and I finally figured out it's so important to commit. And if there's any hesitation there, if you hang back at all, there's no way you're going to stay out in front of the waves.
I try and bury as much rail as I can for the cutback as well, because the less rail you use in the cutback, then the easier it is for yourself to spin out. You know, it all depends on how critical the section is, whether it's steep or fat or already braking. It all depends. But I always try and keep a lot of rail in the water when I'm turning on the actual face, and then if I spin out on the fin or something like that, I lean forward again to try and get back in on the wave so I don't fall out the back. And then try and pull, using my back foot, I try and pull it back in as I'm sliding down the wave. Always keeping my sail high in the water so the white water doesn't get caught up in the sail.
You lean, you compensate. If you slide in that way, so you lean forward into the board and you sheet in your sail, so you gain as much air and in your sail, so you push the nose of the board. So you compensate. You're doing the slide, but at the same time you're throwing the sail forward, so it brings you back into the wave and you're ready for the next one.
Probably noticed looking out anywhere at a wavesailing break, the best sailors are normally the ones that are most upwind, taking off at the peak, or actually behind the peak upwind. The whole key, especially after a long down the line wave ride, is to get back upwind, so when you're on the outside or when you're on the inside, you're always thinking about maintaining your positioning on the reef and getting yourself back upwind. And this becomes very important also in terms of wave selection, because if there are two people on the same swell, if they get on the same swell at the same time, the upwind sailor has the right of way over the downwind sailor. There's not much under here that's going to keep you upwind. And also, the rails on your typical waveboard are relatively soft. The harder the rail, the easier it is to point upwind. So really you're dealing with a board that is not meant to go upwind, has a hard time going upwind, and it's very hard to get used to pointing upwind on it. So what you have to do is become a little creative out on the water, using the ocean to the best of your ability to get back upwind. And if you always keep that in mind, when you're learning how to wave sail, then you can ride pretty much every other wave. You can ride one downwind, kick out of the wave, do whatever, go back out the channel. When you're on the outside, pick up a wave, ride the next wave upwind, and it will maintain your position in the break. Depending on the wind direction, always keep the direction in mind. One direction or the other is going to give you an advantage on one tack. When it's side off, you're going to have an advantage heading out to stay upwind. When it's side on, you'll have advantage coming in. When you're sailing back in, you'll have a pinching ability to come back upwind.
Now that we've hit our lip, we're up at the top. The next part is actually making it. So what we're working on here is looking down over this, big pit of water that you got to drop back into and keep on going, ideally. What you got to do after you come off the top, because your weight's all forward, is transmit your weight to the back of the board so you don't nosedive. And you do that just by body movement. And in wave sailing, body movement is really key. It shows your style, and it shows how loose you are and how fluid you are with the wave.
Coming down after an off the lip into a massive whitewater is kind of a tricky situation, and for a long time I would make the mistake of not holding your path and just giving up too soon, because in the moment it's critical to use all your power. Even if your sail's being held down by the whitewater, you can still pull it out. It's just important that you hold your course sailing straight for the beach, so that your nose doesn't catch in the whitewater and you pearl or whatever else may happen.
If you're too late, okay, this is a trick I learned. If you know how to do chop hops, if you ever do kind of chop hops off the water, when you're late for the lip, the biggest thing to do is yank up on your booms and push on your board so it gets up. Then you can get up over the whitewater, because I think a lot of times people seem to just turn right into the whitewater and then the wave cracks on their rig. But if you can ollie up on top of that water, you'll come down and you'll make it. When you hit lips late, your natural reaction is to let go. But I would say if you just held on, you'd probably make it.
And usually holding on in that last, or giving it that final effort is a lot better an option than just letting your stuff go, because then you have the risk of going on the rocks if you're sailing at Hikipa, or losing your stuff, having a long swim ahead of you, breaking something.
The best is kind of a little bit on shore conditions, I say. With the wind coming up the face of the wave, you get lifted, and then you push that lift, and what you do, you bring it back and you kind of like shoot straight up into the flats. If it's offshore wind, it's kind of harder because you stall up there. You can't poke into the wind. The sail is actually working like slowing you down, like a brake, because it's going like that, flaring. And so hopefully you don't get worked. Basically, when I come really fast, bomb turn, pulling your sail with the backhand really close to you. And then when you are going up, you push on your backhand. So the wind coming from the bottom of the wave, it's like lifting you, and you get some kind of a way for you to get back on top of the board and do an hour. Keep having fun.
I think one of the most important things that you need to have is really a good board. Pretty much all the sails nowadays work. I mean, everyone out there is on a different sail and everyone's sailing well. But I think the biggest thing is really the boards, because the board is what you're really riding. I mean, the wind blows you and gets you going, but once you're on the wave and you're riding the wave, you're riding the board.
Style these days is very forward projection motivated, the same with surfboards. We're taking a lot out of the surfboards and adapting it to sailboard wave riding.
Sails become more efficient, board constructions become more efficient, and just rocker lines become more efficient. So now we've moved into this type of outline, which is more like a surfboard, where it carries its volume through this area, your planing area. It has a lot of radius in the nose, a lot of radius in the tail. It's basically just a overgrown 6'6" surfboard.
Over here, a lot of the guys have been going shorter and shorter and going wider.
I've always had kind of big boards. People kind of laugh at me and say, wow, what are you doing? But
I'd rather go for a bigger, floatier board than to have one that's too small.
You kind of have to have 2 boards. Actually have 100 boards would be nice.
This is the only wave board I have right now. I use it in onshore, side shore, offshore, any shore, big waves, small waves. And that's one of the things with the newer boards is you're gonna be able to sail them in a lot more of a range.
It's always good to have one board that you call your floater board, one for lighter wind, like 5.0 up to maybe 5.7 sail size. And then you need something a little bit smaller in case it starts blowing, because the other board has a tendency to blow out of the water a little bit when you start really going fast.
If you have to sail like a long way offshore to get to a reef break or something, I don't advise to have a very stinky board, because I've paddled in a few times, swam it in a few times, and the keeper's not that far out, so I'm all right.
Thickness is really an important way to get more volume in your board too. You know, if you look at a 1/4 inch of thickness out of 3 inches, out of 4 inches, a 1/4 inch is like 8%, 9%, whereas 9% of length is 6 to 7 inches on a board. So just by adding a 1/4 inch of thickness, you get a lot more flotation for your board.
The advantage of having 8.2, 8.3 boards is that you can come up into bowls, so round, torquing them around like you would on a small surfboard, versus a longer board from even a couple years ago, or even last year when someone would be riding an 8.6, 8.8. It just has more nose, more tail. It just feels like a draggier board.
And in the mainland, I know that they use a lot longer boards than we do here because of they need more water line to get going in the 5.5, 6.0 wind conditions, and there's a lot more drift than here. But the truth is, once you start practicing a lot and you get as much sailing hours as we're getting in here in Maui, you start really feeling really comfortable on shorter boards sometimes, if they're made with the right displacement and volume distribution.
The foot straps have stayed mainly in the same place all through the years. 15 to 16 inch stance for wave riding, except for when I get into 8.8s, which is a very rare size to be building these days. But if there is a custom order for an 8.8, I like to bring up the forward foot strap to about 18. And that just enables a person to get more of the rail and more of the board to turn where they want it to, and not so much a ballerina kind of stance.
These boards, you're actually standing in the sweet spot from the beginning because we develop the actual board around your stance. Whether if you wanted a larger stance, I would have to modify the V and the rocker to adjust for your stance. So that's why they are custom boards.
Indestructible. Hey, this board can get ran over by a car. We got proof.
If you're into just going out there and cruising around, and just sailing, just, to have some fun, but you're not really care about what kind of performance you got, then you can get any kind of board. But if you really want to, be one of the fastest guys out there, have an easier time on yourself, then I recommend getting a styro board.
You get a lot of flexibility out of the board, and at the same time you get a good spring
reaction, which is great for our waveboards. You want to have that flex for the sort of G-turns that we're doing at the high speeds we want to go at. You want the board to give. You don't want it to stay rigid and just follow straight. So you want it to flex and spring out of its turn so you get projection.
Yeah, guys are jumping 30, 40 feet in the air, doing flips, double flips. Rarely do we get these boards back busted. Clark foam boards typically buckle quite easily. You couldn't jump a board. For one thing, it wouldn't go that high because it weighs too much. But if it did, you'd really have to nurse the landings on them to get them to hold up. Sheet foam, the sandwiching really tends to take the shock of jumping. Using pads on your board too softens the landing.
And that construction pretty much is what we're all starting to go for nowadays. And that's definitely the new revolution.
Who has the right of way when you're wave sailing?
I know.
Going out has the right of way, but you want to keep in mind that you're trying to get out through the surf. If you have an optimal jump, great, as long as it doesn't screw someone else's wave up.
If you're going to affect them in any way, it's best to avoid them, let them have their wave, and take a little spill, That's something that's a big thing, especially when it's crowded out there. It's just being aware and thinking about how you'd want to be treated if that was your wave.
Time it right, so once you're on the inside, there's no sets. Come in with the sets instead of going out, stuck on the inside with the sets, and everybody's got them.
On the outside, in determining whose wave it is, almost all of the time, it is the person who jibed on the wave first. Now, if you cannot determine who jibed on the wave first, then the upwind sailor or the sailor closest to the peak has right of way.
Even if you go way out, whale watching, and it's your wave, and it's a good wave, by the time you get to the place where it breaks, you will not be the only one on it for sure. That's a keeper. Welcome. Aloha.
Even though you might be in the right of way, you might have the wave legally, sometimes you're in totally the wrong spot. And if some guy's in the bull section, he's in the right place. I'd rather have them get a good ride than me fight for the right of way. And you really have to look at what's down the line. I mean, if there's nothing down the line, it's like, you can have it.
It's really funny, with the days I go out with no sail numbers on, everyone cuts me off way worse. If they know who you are, it helps, but it still doesn't help that much. It's like when I go out, I'd get one wave to every 4 of Jason's because he cuts everybody off, for example. And that's why they get good. But it's like, it's not really fair And he has so much control, he can actually sail around people.
Never, never go over the back of a wave, especially if someone's on it. Definitely, there's by no right do you have of coming over the back of that wave. It's definitely a major sin to do this in wave sailing.
Key is judging where they're going to go. You know, if you're in tune with what they're doing, you can pretty much share a wave. You know, like me and my brother, we can share waves every now and then just by knowing what we're going to do. If he's going to come off the top and I go down, I'm not going to, you know, run right into him. If we're in tune.
Basically go out to have fun. I'm not worried about the crowds.
Jason will love me after this video, won't he?
Yeah, I've been working a lot with sails too, because obviously you need a good board and sail combination to sail well.
Sail design has sort of been a little bit ahead of board design in the sense that the calming of radical design trends has been a few years ahead of the boards. Sails now with the newer boards with the mast tracks further back, sails are being sailed more upright, more vertical off the board. That had an effect on clew position and the angle of the boom. On the older style sails, we were working with raking the sail back, and the geometry of where the foot straps were versus the base of the sail versus the booms, that triangle was completely different. So the new sails always have to be considered with the newest designs and boards.
My opinion, frankly, is that if you have old equipment, the very first thing you want to do is replace the mast. Once you've replaced the mast, probably the next step you want to take is to replace your sail. And after that, the boom and the board and the fin are probably the last things I would look at, because if you have one of the new boards, a composite super light, easily planing board, and you stick an old rig on it, you're going to have a very hard time managing the rig. Whereas the new rigs today are so stable, they're so easy to use, that'll make your old board work much better. Oh, I can already hear all the board makers going, "Klaus, you asshole."
By and large, I'd say 2% of the people that sail tune their equipment. 98% of them rig their equipment. Just grabbing a hold of the line and hauling on it is not accurate. Tuning, it means 2 or 3 millimeters at the most of adjustment. So a little bit less on the downhaul is going to make the whole thing feel more powerful, but a little top heavy. And maybe in the conditions you're in, like it's onshore and you need that juice, it's okay, right? But if it's offshore and the top's heavy, you're going to wrestle with the sail every time you drop in on the wave, right? And likewise, if you over downhaul it and the wind's onshore, you're not going to have enough power to get out. And likewise, when you try and catch the wave, you won't have enough power to catch the wave either.
Handling anything over 5.5 square meters in the surf gets to be pretty tough. So the reality is that while most of the sails have been designed around conditions in the 4.5 to 5.0 range, and of course as such, that's where most of the knowledge has been gained and most of the expertise has been applied. The smaller sails have come a long way in the last few years. The crucial thing is to be using the right masts on those sails, otherwise you're not going to have any fun with them.
It's not uncommon to get really good results out of the sails by using a softer mast if you're a lighter person. If you use the recommended mast and you are a lightweight person, chances are the sail's going to be too stiff.
I think one of the things that people are looking for in wave sails right now, just in general, is durability.
Most of the sails that people are using today have monofilm windows, and of course monofilm scratches easier than PVC does, so it's important to take good care of the monofilm windows.
We make our windows at 175 micron, which is, I mean, if you're just talking about strong, that's way, way stronger, and it never deforms. Now, you poke a pin in it, that's a different story. Or one of those stupid noses on the boards, you know, those little Turkish slipper noses, which are the dumbest thing that ever happened anyway. You know, that can poke a window. But even if it scrapes across it's not going to poke it. It's only when you get that full-on direct impact and you know, this is rare that happens.
As you can see with this sail, this has already had one damage area, which has been replaced. If that was damaged without this reinforcing, this area would have torn out this whole section of a normal monofilm sail. So what we've done is isolated the damage.
Pure film, 5 mil, no reinforcement, that's a different story, because it suffers from ultraviolet degradation really quickly. You can figure, if you're a sailor, every hour that you put your sail laying flat down on the beach in the sun is 1 hour that you won't own it. And so people think, you know, they go to the beach, they sail for an hour, they come back, and then they have a 2-hour break, and they leave their sail laying cooking in the sun, and then they do that for 20 weekends, and then the thing breaks, and they think, oh, well, it's film, it's bad stuff. But it's not. It's leaving it in the sun that's the bad thing.
Forward loop, basic. All it takes is a bit of commitment.
You really don't even need a braking wave to do a forward loop at all. The key really to learning is to be powered up.
Be loose. Don't be tight. You don't want to break your board or your ankles.
And just an intense desire to make something happen.
Speed. If you have tons of speed, if you're going as fast or faster than the wind, then you're going to have full control up in the air. The main thing I see when people are learning forwards is they dive a lot of times. Either they pull with both hands, ooh, and then there's no pull, because what actually makes you do the forward is the overpowered feeling you get by sheeting in your back hand. The best way to feel it is if you stand on the beach and you just stand there on your board and sheet in with your back hand super hard and lock your front hand, you go, you whip right around the nose every time, you know? Whereas if you sheet in both ways, you just kind of flop on your sail. If you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, all of a sudden you'll see you have so much control through the move that you can watch where you're going. You can completely judge how far you have down to the water. You can even pick out what position, where you want to land, because however hard you pull on the sail is gonna be how fast you come out of the move and how far downwind you're gonna float.
The one thing you don't want to do is go up and go, I'm gonna do one, and then chicken out. The scariest thing about it is the whole fact about going forward. People have this phobia of going this way because they look at the water and they see that, ooh, if I don't make it, I'm gonna hit that really hard. But that's the number one thing, is not to look at the water.
Especially for girls, it's like, you don't want to hurt your face, right? Especially when you have a face like this and not, anyway. So once you can loop, you jump up, you know, pull your legs, and you're looking back straight away after you've jumped up. So you're not looking at the water forward, you're looking back. And that's the thing, the difference between people learning to do loops and people who can do loops. Everybody can tell you the movements, like you sheet in, you pull your feet, you do all this stuff. But to go up to try your first one is really hard. You've got to be happy and not thinking about it. Like if you hit the water and you think, I've got to do a loop now, I've got to do a loop, I've got to do a loop, this wave, this wave, this wave, you'll never do it. You've got to be thinking, oh, what a fun day sailing this is, and be relaxed. And next thing you know, you'll just jump up and do it automatically. Nothing can happen to you when you're learning to do loops, I tell you. Especially girls, because we don't sheet in as hard as men. It's not like we can over-rotate, land flat. That's how people seem to hurt ourselves. We're quite a lot weaker, so for us to sheet in to over-rotate, it's pretty rare. You just see you're sailing like this and you see the wave. I stand up and sort of position myself already upright. Once you're already up, you're already halfway in the position. Like a loop, you're already that much, so what's that? A couple of, 15 degrees already. So it's not a 360-degree rotation, it's 360 degrees minus, that difference of the mast, and it's quite a lot.
It's really important to get your body to follow, because everything you initiate with your head and everything follows. I look at my harness hook right there and just whip it really hard and then come out of it as fast as I can. It's all dependent on how big of a piece of chop you hit, how fast you're going, and how high you get into the air. You're going to learn how to judge that by trial and error, by over-rotating or under-rotating. So generally, the smaller the chop, the quicker and more off of the wind I'm going to have to go, and the harder I'm going to have to pull and kick my feet over my head to come out of it planing. When I under-rotate, what's happening is I'm not doing enough body motion because either one of two things. I didn't get high enough for the angle of rotation that I chose to take, or the wind died and I got backwinded or the wind shifted or something, and which stalled my sail. And then that's when your mast hits the water and you come down and land on your back.
Planing forwards. The key to this move is not breaking your board. And the way you break your board is if your nose hits first. If your nose hits first, all the pressure goes right on the nose and it just snaps it right in half. And what you want to do is you want to extend your hand back further than normal. Like a normal forward, people are holding their booms kind of sideways. Matty Pritchard does it. That's where I kind of picked it up, is watching how Matt whips his forward so hard. If it's a low one and you're close to the water, you want to stay tucked. So when you come down, your tail hits just before the nose, but off the wind so that you're still moving, and that way your board doesn't sink. When you come into the wind, you hit your rail, and your rail just hits the water and kills your speed completely. And right when you hit the water, you want to pump a little bit and cut back up into the wind to get your wind back. It's so strange, like once it clicks in your mind and you've got it, you just got it.
Well, it's a wannabe world and you're a wannabe girl, but you can't find the right lust to suit ya. It's a make-believe life, yes, you're living a lie, 'cause you can't find the right truth to loot ya. You're living a game, but would life be the same if you had no fan base to root ya? It could all go away in a matter of days when the revolution comes and unglues ya. 'Cause it's a wannabe world. Yes, it's a wannabe world. And it's a wannabe world. Yes, it's a wannabe world. Your brain to remain the same, 'cause you like this situation. You must hide the key from people like me who want to change this institution. There's miles and miles of your plastic smiles with the scent of makeup poison. If you take it away and be yourself for a day, you will be you on this occasion. 'Cause it's a wannabe world, and it's a wannabe world, and it's a wannabe world. Yes, it's a wannabe world.
Forward. Everything's forward. Moving forward. Leaning forward. Leaning back will get you nowhere.
But you don't want to be coming away, and then you're like in this position, like going fast, and then going, oh my God, I got it, you know, and then you're like, wow.
Use your momentum and the wave. Cut.